Hi, so I've been working on a video on retouching in the portrait photography industry as a whole, kind of exploring the different directions people go in that, some of the changes that AI is making, good and bad, and in the process of doing that, I wanted to show some examples of me retouching photographs and the decisions I make. I put out a request on Insta for some people to volunteer to have me retouch some photos where we can see the sort of before and after and the whole process. Lots of people really kindly did. I'm working through them now, but in the process of doing that, one client, Christina, very kindly allowed me to show 4 of her photographs. She had some extras she wanted anyway. So I recorded me retouching all 4 of those just to see if there was kind of any examples that came up along the way. And I thought the whole thing was actually kind of interesting. So if you're a fan of longer form work, or you like skipping through videos, or you just want to, I don't know, lull out and enjoy the process in full, here's that.
So here we have Christina Knight's picks here. She'd already picked some in the past, and they were actually really cool shots. I can just show you. So these were her original shots from the shoot. I want to show you because I think she made some really cool choices. Like this is like, I think maybe her main headshot, and I quite like it because it's quite, for a main, it's got a lot of drama to it. This is what I'll do other videos on this, but this is what I'd really suggest as a shot to kind of get you out there, get you noticed. And we've got an even more editorial one in black and white, really emphasizing the hair. That would make like a really nice shot number 2. Something more traditional here, and again, some slightly kind of quirky stuff. I would say that's the stuff you want to play towards in making headshot selections. Don't be conservative, be adventurous. And here she's doing a similar thing, like a nice mixed. This is really cool. I like this a lot. It's quite classic headshot, and it's quite kind of still interesting whilst being quite a conventional headshot. As goes for this, we're going to play with the temperature on that a little bit. And this, a little out of focus there. This one needs some brightness. This one's quite cool because I can show you, like, this is a cool shot. You can see why she's picked it. It's got some drama to it. But technically, from my perspective, there's some stuff that definitely wants fixing. There's like a weird line down here. The whole thing. Oh yeah, the line is. It's actually like a blurred hair, but it's not. That's not ideal, is it? We'll get rid of that. So this goes to show, like, this is a cool shot to pick from the sense of drama and the kind of thing that comes in when you're a photographer and you're like, okay, I've got some things that can clean up there. But that's absolutely the purpose of retouching, for those little moments where it's a really nice shot. It's got really nice mood, but isn't technically perfect. But let's start with this one. So I haven't done anything with these. These would have been exactly as she would have received them in the original contact sheet. So this is quite warm, right? I'm just going to pull down the white balance a little bit, make it a little cooler. And I think this looks like it was shot with my Sigma 105. I bet it was. Yeah, Sigma 105. So this lens is really nice. It's very sharp. It's quite low contrast. Just it's 105mm lens, which and it's at 1.4, which is a very fast for a 105 lens. So it loses out a little bit of contrast there, but that again, easy to fix in the retouch. So we're just even adding a little brightness, little contrast. In anything on this, like maybe a little saturation. Actually, now we've got the levels right. Most of the retouching though, like this is capture 1, so this is your raw processing tool. So I'm just getting used to this. So this is your raw processing kind of powerhouse. All these photos are shot raw, so there's a whole load of information there, but it's not where we're going to do the brunt of the retouch. This is just where we want to get everything kind of right. You'll also see on this, like, and everything I'm going to show you, this has already had my LUT or camera preset, so import preset that I shoot everything to, is applied to it. So you can see how like a raw file would come in. like that's absolutely raw. You see how kind of flat and muted it is. That's very much the purpose of raw files. They're meant to just have all the information there, so that you can then process it. But you would never want to use something like that. That would like be like giving someone, I don't know, like a just a plate of cooked pasta with no seasoning. That is not a photo that's ready for distribution. That's why people don't like giving out raw files. They're not meant to be finished things. They're more like a negative in old-fashioned film photography. And that's exactly how I treat my my import preset. I treat it more like it's like a film stock. So mine's kind of based on Kodak Portra, which is probably the most popular film preset, because it does very nice things with skin tones. I started with a look that was based on Kodak Portra, and then I just tweaked it with some things that I generally like, which were kind of borrowed from what would almost always be used in a conventional color grade in a film. There's kind of a very traditional movie look that gets used maybe 70-80% of the time, depending on genres. Like there's lots of things that people kind of commonly do just because it's what we think, I don't know, it just kind of suits what things like. But there's now just like a language of movies. Anyway, we're going to open it in Photoshop because that's where most of the actual work is going to be done. Sorry, I'm having a little fight with this microphone. Okay, so now we're in Photoshop and we're just going to do some things. So first steps on any retouch, I tend to just create a new layer there. Everything in this retouch should be basically non-destructive, meaning I'm using a process in Photoshop wherein I can kind of anything that either I don't like or I send to the client and maybe the client doesn't like something, everything you can kind of always turn back. Okay, so we're just going to create a new layer there. Everything I do in Photoshop, I try and keep non-destructive. Photoshop is like a bitmap program, so you are changing actual pixels, which makes it very powerful, especially when we do things like frequency separation later, in that it means we're actually we are like always layering on actual pixels on top of things, and we are changing the image. But if I break it down into layers, I can always turn off pretty much anything I've done. But stuff like this, just getting rid of any kind of stray hairs. I don't usually get rid of all stray hairs. Like, you want people to look like humans. What we're doing is just the one of the big focuses of retouching is it's not about like absolutely what does this person look like. It's about kind of how do they come across, because all of the, you know, like changing a stray hair is not being disingenuous. Their hair might not be there, you know. If they're in any kind of big production, they're gonna have professional hair and makeup, and you've got to imagine everything will be done to like a higher standard than just from a headshot shoot. So there's nothing disingenuous about this. What you're doing is just removing distractions. Actually, and there are shots of Christina, right, where her hair is like the big feature of the thing. So those like stray hairs over her face are something we're really emphasizing. So it's a real shot by shot. Like, this is why I don't really use or rate any kind of AI retouching, because all of these things are creative choices. Like the photos which I'm using, which are really about emphasizing the hair and kind of having her looking through her hair in a really punky way. You can't just go, in a retouch you should always be removing stray hairs. Sometimes the stray hairs are like really key to what you're trying to say with the photograph, or what we're trying to put across. So there's no algorithmic way of doing this. Every single action you take is a creative choice. Some of them I do, you know, almost universally the same things most times, but that doesn't mean it's the creative choice that everyone would make. That's just a creative choice that suits my style. Yeah, so there's no real way to automate this. There are bits where we're going to use AI later on, but not to make, they're not to sort of, the AI isn't making decisions, it's just speeding up things that would normally have taken like a large amount of my time, so doing selections and things like that. I'll show you later. But yeah, I think AI is something really useful to us. Like, I don't want to be a Luddite. In fact, I kind of always like to lean into whatever the latest technology available is and see if there's anything in it that can help my workflow, because I mean, A, that means to a better result, but B, if you don't, you can be sure someone else will be doing that, and then they'll have an advantage over you, and no one wants that. So I try and use every bit of new technology that I think can be useful to me. And some of the stuff with the selections later, so like selecting complicated things was something that, like, it's not that you couldn't do it previously, but it would just, and people did in high-end retouching, so like magazine covers, things like that, where they have maybe sometimes, say, 48 hours can be the actual retouch time on a magazine cover, which is absolutely crazy. And some of those things would be just people where their job is just to spend 8 hours doing a really, really refined selection, and obviously that's great and gives you excellent results, but there would be that's the sort of thing that just wouldn't be feasible on a headshot retouch, unless you're charging £2,500 for each image that someone wants. This big hair is going to be, I might do this in a different way. We'll see how it does it. Actually, that's not bad. So again, well, when I talk about AI, even this is using, like, it's the spot removal tool, which is Photoshop's had for a long while, will be an example of early AI. So yeah, that's probably about where we want to be. I'm umming and ahhing about these forehead hairs. I think I want to keep most of them, like, again, keep it looking like a human with real things. The more real things that aren't in any way something that could be conceived as like a negative against the person, or something that like reduces the value impact of the photograph, are good. If you can leave them in, it's going to make the whole thing look realer, because our objective here is not to make the photo look like it's been heavily retouched. It's to make it look sort of a little bit perfect, but like just that we caught a perfect moment. So now I'm going to run a quick shortcut, which is a sort of thing I've set up. You'll find this everywhere. This is frequency separation. So what we're doing here, and this is key to my whole retouch process, is you see it looks like I'm just applying like a blur to the image. What I'm doing is splitting the image into two layers, one that goes on top of the other. This blurred layer is what we call the low frequency layer. So this is, you can see I can just turn off the high frequency and just have the low frequency. And what it enables you to do is just to be able to, when you look at the low frequency, the blurs, so these kind of blurs of shapes and colors that appear under the detail, we can make edits to these without losing any of the information that's on this layer. So when I turn that back on, that's got all of the sharp detail, all of everything that makes it look like, a very clean modern image. I can turn off this layer, and so I'm not affecting any of those things, and I can now just work on the skin tone. So this is kind of like a makeup artist would do with like a blending brush applying a foundation. I can just kind of even out these skin tones without losing any detail. One of the things you'll see on really mediocre retouching is that you get this really soft skin, but actually the image will look not dissimilar from this, right? It'll maybe with the eyes just poking through as like sharp things, but essentially all of the skin, because people just go, oh, people don't want to have wrinkles and stuff, so they just basically blur the skin, which makes people look like well, it actually doesn't really change the look. It makes it look like Vaseline's been smeared on the lens, or what it more commonly looks like, as people aren't idiots, is just that it's been retouched with some horrible AI software like a Facetune or something like this. But what we get here is all of the benefits of that smoothing, all of the kind of nice high value stuff that just makes it look like they don't have any kind of hotspots. There's nothing too harsh in the image. Nothing's going to draw the attention. We just have like nice clean skin tones, which is going to make it look polished. Good. Just even these things out. Not too much to do. And again, we don't want to go crazy with it. And also we're going to be able to do in this layer, one sec. Let me just get, so again, another thing, like little lines on the neck. Those will just be, nothing disingenuous about it. If you change your head position slightly, like you'll get different wrinkles, different lines in different places. And sometimes you don't get rid of them completely, but just the ability to kind of soften them out so they're not distracting from the overall impact of the photograph. So now, having smoothed all that out, you can see I can now turn back on the detail layer, and you can see the differences we made here. That's just turning off and on the changes I've made, and you see that it's just very naturally evening out that whole image. And in fact, as you turn that off and on, you quite often see things that you haven't done quite as much as you wanted. I'm just going to change out that hard line there. I'm going to do one more thing. I'm just going to go into the eyes, and you don't want to go crazy with this. You know, when you see, and again, this is like another retouching. Back in the days, people would just have like an eye whitener preset, and they would just be basically painting white onto eyes, and that's a bad idea because it just makes people look very startled and not very real. Whereas what I'm doing is cloning a bit of the color from one of the brighter bits of the eye where the lights hit it a little bit more, and I'm just gently putting it into the other bits of the eyes just to get a bit more light into the eyes. We're going to do some other things to the eyes in a second just to get rid of, see, it's kind of a little bloodshot. Okay, now we're going to jump into the high frequency layer. So now I'm zooming in closer, and now what I'm doing again is we want to keep all of the details. So with this, as nothing's being deleted, all I'm doing is cloning, undo that, cloning bits of detail that I like. So in the eye, you're just getting little cleaner bits of the eye, and you're just cloning it onto the bits where there's like a little vein in there. It's a tricky bit. Yeah, we got it. We'll do the same. We'll get rid of some lines under the eye. Obviously, we're looking at this like massively close. No one will see this unless they're looking really, really close. But with a headshot, you want it to be able to look good up close. Also, there's like a subconscious impression when you do all these little details. You're always like, no one will see them all in their individual nature. It's like you kind of don't, like, it's why you don't need to get everything, but they have an overall impression. Once you get rid of all the little imperfections like this, when you look at the whole thing, even zoomed quite far out, they kind of give an impression of a higher value thing, as in it was a shot from a higher value production, which is really important in casting. Casting isn't about, like, I think there's something when people come from drama schools, even the best drama schools, and they have sometimes quite a competitive thing, but the casting within drama schools, so obviously everyone's going to get some sort of role, and their motivation behind the casting is to kind of give this person the best chance of doing a good performance. Let's see this interesting thing from this person. Whereas the real world casting is not that. No one's really trying to give anyone an opportunity in the film industry. It's like a closed door system. The way to get cast in the film industry is you need to convince the person casting you that you would be doing them a favor by being in their thing. You would be elevating the value of their production by agreeing to be in it. Everyone is looking to get the good deal, especially producers who tend to make a lot more of the casting decisions than people realize. Again, there'll be more videos on this, but like, if you're ever in a position where you can choose from between having the producer of a project really want you for the role and have the casting director of a project really want you for a role, 10 times out of 10, you want to be the producer's pick, because that's going to be where the decision goes almost always, apart from maybe casting directors with a huge amount of sway, but even then they would need to have the director on their side. I don't think having the casting director love you is ever quite enough if it doesn't also convince the producer and the director. So they're who you're really aiming at. Casting directors work more as the gatekeepers to the industry. Obviously, if you can't impress casting directors, hey, that's the end of my Pomodoro for this moment. But you know what? We're gonna power through. I tend to do this in Pomodoros, like little 25-minute bits, because that's about how long you can concentrate. So you just have little 5-minute breaks. Otherwise, you start to lose focus. But you know what? We're doing a video, so I'm gonna power on through. Let's do it. That's the kind of man I am. All right. Cool. So now we've done some low frequency and some high frequency. See, actually, her forehead, Christina's quite young, I think. So not a lot of whatever they call them, visual signs of aging. Those you trim down a little bit in the retouch. Again, you don't want to change someone's age, but you kind of want to, I don't know, say if someone's like ages, I don't know, maybe 45. It's not like you don't want them to look 45. I'm 43, by the way. So I'm knocking on the door of 45. But you want them to look like a Hollywood 45. Well, not the Hollywood 45 where they've had surgeries go wrong, but the more aspirational Hollywood 45 that just looks like good diet, exercise, good night's sleep, and a lot of water, albeit it's potentially also surgically enhanced. Such is modern life. But yeah, there's no sense in making someone look like something they don't look like. But the idea is to make someone look like how they would on their best day in a very well lit production with high-end makeup. Because there we're just realistically showing someone what they would see on the screen were they to cast Christina. There we go. So that's the main part of the retouch kind of done. What I'm now going to do here is just some little things. We're going to do some eye adjustments just to get some brightness out of the eyes. What I'm going to do here is just a curves adjustment. I'm just going to click on that black, which means that color isn't going to change. I'm going to push this up wildly high. Obviously, this isn't something we're going to do. And I'm just going to invert that layer, because we're just going to paint it in, that big adjustment in the area where we want it. So it's just going to bring out a little bit of lightness to the eye, but I can be quite rough with this because it's not affecting the darker areas. This is another area where people can go way, way overboard in retouching, and like there needs to be a light hitting someone's eye for you to brighten it. If there isn't a light hitting the eye, see, that's already a bit too big. I think it's a bit extreme. Let's pull that back to like 60%. How are we doing with that? There we go. It just brings out a little bit more color, but it still looks quite realistic. Talking of color, I might do a similar approach to some lips. I'm just going to go, because my import preset tends to push reds to towards oranges, because I think that mostly on skin tones that's a nice thing to do. But what we're going to do here is just put some of the red back in, and again, so that was just on the lips. We're just going to inverse that, and again we're going to paint this in to the areas that we want. But again, because I'm just affecting basically the red colors, I can be pretty quick and dirty with this painting in, because it's not really going to affect anything else. And that darkened it a little bit as well. We're going to go a little bit further with that. I'm just going to do like it's another quick macro function I've got here, which is just a shortcut for a thing I do quite often, and this has created a couple of different layers. This is the shadows layer, so it's just a shortcut so that this layer where I'm painting and where I'm darkening things, I'm in a layer where it's going to use the shadows of the photograph and it's going to paint much harder onto shadows. So again, I don't need to be super accurate with the pen to get it looking realistic. And we're doing the exact opposite here. So this is just going to be brightening areas that we want to be a bit brighter, make it a little bit punchier. Most retouching is basically painting. It's like, it's quite a therapeutic way to spend your time, and I've been doing this for long enough that you're making a lot of decisions, but like they're not super conscious decisions. It's not a stressful day, that's what I'm saying, but it does take time to do it right. If you ever try and rush this, you just end up with really bad results, and you can ruin a photo that started as a really good photo. So now I've spotted a couple of other things, so I'm just kind of jumping in with another new layer. Just as you see I'm retouching, I'm kind of like constantly zooming in and out of the photo. So obviously as you do that, you're going to see little bits maybe you didn't see before, but really you can check this on the whole thing. If we look at this here, so I'm looking at this is Apple's 32-inch display, so it's like a 5K display, so like this is about as big and it's high resolution as anyone makes a display, and A, that makes this process quite nice to do, but B, it also means if I look at a photo full size on this, I know that I'm looking at it about as big as anyone is ever going to see it. So if you're not seeing things on this, you know that like probably no one is going to see them, which is quite useful. Just going to go back into the low frequency here. Here's another thing we can do. So it was just like in the background here, like this line's a little, this is just a background thing, but it's a little hard, that line. I'm just going to kind of, again, just painting. I'm just going to soften it a little bit, make it a little less jarring, and I'm going to make it a little bit straighter. But like that's the advantage of frequency separation, is because you're not like messing with any of the details on a low frequency layer, you can basically just treat it like a painting and it'll still look photorealistic. So before and after there, we're just going to do a few last things. What I'm going to do, oh yeah, okay, we're going to use some AI here. So I'm just going to select this again, it's a quick macro shortcut. So this is just going to do a selection of just Christina. See how it's just little lines there come around. So this is so cool. So this is one button just to do that, to do this accurate selection all the way around the hair, all the way around like that. Back in the day, that would have been quite a long thing to do, but now we can just have robots in the cloud do it for us. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to warm up the shadows of that ever so slightly. And I might just use the same selection. I might just overlay. Just going to add a bit of contrast. So it's just got this kind of gold skin tone. Just going to change some blending options. This is just going to stop it affecting the shadows, because my blacks are always very slightly lifted from black, so you don't get complete blacks in my photographs, which I just like because it makes them look a little bit more like they've been printed or that they were shot on film. So I don't want to lose that, which is why I was making that thing there. So that's just overlaying a little tiny sort of warming gradient on the skin tone. I'm sure once YouTube compresses the hell out of this with its video compression algorithm, you're probably not even going to see the differences there. I might I kind of just want to separate her from the background a tiny bit. So again, this is like another quick macro. It's similar to the previous one, but it does the opposite thing in that it's just selecting the do that. It's just selecting the background of the image. There we go. Cool. So it's just select the background on that. I'm just going to maybe in the shadows, I just want to kind of throw in, yeah, there we go. So you see in the shadow, I'm just pushing that towards green, maybe towards blue a little bit. It's just slightly tweaking the colors. And most of the color grade is done in the import preset. There we go. It's kind of cool. And this, I'm just going to feather it a little bit, which is just going to make it blend in, make it look more natural. You can see a before and after on that. So you see it's just slightly tweaking the color of the background, giving us a bit more separation. Cool. Before and then after. Before, after.
I really like this one. It's warm. It's a little pink, though, right? So I use these Leica cameras. I had 2 different SL2S cameras, and they have radically different green to pink white balances, which apparently is quite common with them. They're based off the same technology as the Arri Alexa sensors, apparently, which is quite a nice thing, because they're very commonly used in a lot of film and TV production that people will be familiar with, which is nice. It gives it kind of a cinematic aesthetic. I really like them, but the green to pink was slightly off on mine, so Leica are currently repairing those. I'm just going to make this a little cooler, just because I know I'm probably going to add some warmth to the skin tones in the retouch. You can also see here a little bit, like, there's like a tiny bit of movement within the frame, or maybe I've missed the focus like a tiny bit. The focus is like a tiny bit forward here. It's maybe on an eyebrow. This can happen with just like a tiny slight movement, sort of thing that, like, not really an issue, because we can use some sharpening, and again, kind of a point of the retouch, you can tweak these things a little bit. Stuff that maybe, if you were just picking from a photography perspective, you would maybe, you know, if it was just me doing it, maybe I'd go for like the most just technically perfect photograph to save me some time. But when people are picking photos themselves, obviously, and with good reason, they're more interested in just the one that has the most perfect expression from their perspective, and that's totally fair. So the cool thing about the retouch is we can tweak little things just so we can make it so we're both happy with the result. So we're going to use a little sharpening later on. Sharpening is another one of the things. So talking about AI in a lot in these retouching videos, because AI is like massively changing the way people do retouching, but I think not in the way that the general public maybe thinks, because like the consumer tech on AI is, for want of a better phrase, pretty shit. Like, it's doing incredible things, but it's just doing them in such an obnoxious and horrible way. It's like they're so intent on impressing people with the power of the tech that it's so overblown. If you turn on AI enhancing on any kind of consumer software like Facetune or whatever, it just immediately makes the image look like the whole thing was generated by AI, or that you're so uncomfortable with yourself that you've basically generated this like hyper perfect avatar, which, like, I mean, in general life is probably a bad idea, but in acting headshots is absolutely career ending, right? Any kind of like the least appealing thing in all of casting is probably insecurity on the part of the actor. That's what a lot of people maybe don't realize. It's like there's no perfect look. If you look at, especially in modern casting, maybe if you go back to the 90s and, like, you know, 80% of the characters in a drama are sort of hot young blondes or something. It's just not really the case now, outside of maybe some of those US stations, like is it the CW? I don't know. They still make those very kind of 90s shows. But most modern TV dramas, like, the cast look like real people, right? maybe slightly more attractive real people, but they look like real people. So you don't need to second guess in casting what the producer is going to be looking for. You just need to look like the kind of best, most interesting version of yourself and hope that that's something that fits into the drama. So it's definitely not about conforming to some imagined ideal. But obviously what we're doing right now, just getting rid of, it's a weird thing to say, is I'm getting rid of tiny imperfections, as it were. But that is not about saying I look perfect. That's about elevating the value of the shot so that you get seen within the context of a high production value drama. It just subconsciously puts across to people that you are A, quite experienced, and B, are going to elevate the value of their production. But it's not about making you look like a different person. So yeah, AI is incredibly powerful and it can save time in loads of things. But generally, you know what? So here I'm just weighing up whether or not to get rid of these hairs. And you know what? I don't think it's worth. I think they kind of look cool. Like she's got hair there. It just kind of makes sense for there to be hair there. It's not distracting. It makes it look real. It's a good thing. So that's our first layer. So now you'll be familiar with the process, hopefully. We're just going to bring in our frequency separation layer now. So this, we just choose what we want to be our low frequency layer. This is different from every photo. It's a judgment call. Basically, you're choosing the area with, so if we go all the way down like that, that's all the detail you want to keep. Anything we push, we blend past. This is detail that we're not going to have in our low frequency layer. So detail we're going to be able to kind of smooth out. It's about right for me. If you're learning this as a photographer, there are better places to learn this. Learn it from our Aaron Nath at Flern. I would recommend Flern. This is where I learn most of this stuff. The joys of learning things online. But mostly, like you learn the techniques, but most of this stuff just comes from like doing it a lot. Because it's basically painting, right? Like I'm not a painter, but I can paint like this. Just because I've done this for a long time. And I'm sure if you wanted to learn painting, yes, there would be some online courses and stuff you could take, and they would definitely help accelerate your journey, and you would learn fundamentals that would be really important. But really, the brunt of your skill is going to come from just doing it right again and again and again. And certainly when I moved to, you'll notice if you watch me do a few of these that like almost everything is done with frequency separation. There's pretty much no, like there's little bits of cloning and stuff, but really the whole principle of the thing is that you use frequency separation to separate low frequency layer and high frequency layer, and then essentially anything you want to change in an image is just a question of painting on the low frequency layer and then cloning on the high frequency layer. But you're always just moving one bit of an image over another, be that like a large section of color or a tiny section of detail. We're just going to come in here. Again, we'll have done this before on things. Just going to tweak these eyes. Nice. While I'm here, and you see this is just like a shadow here, which is nice. It's natural light hitting the backdrop, something I've done very much intentionally. I like these shots to look maybe organic, and it is just natural light. We can see this if I bring back in the high frequency layer. You can see in her eyes, that's just a reflection of a window. It's the only thing that's lighting her, which is really nice, especially when you counterbalance it with some of my more overwrought dramatic shots where I would have used big old LEDs and some studio light to give it a more punchy look. I think you can kind of do a really cool 1-2 pair where you have a shot that looks very punchy, very commercial drama, and that gives people an idea of how you would look in a show that's lit in that way, which is probably about half of TV. And then right next to it, you have something that's entirely natural light, which is just going, I'm very comfortable showing you what I look like with very little manipulation at all. He says, manipulating the image. These shots won't look manipulated. That's the whole thing on a retouch. Retouch shots shouldn't look like they've been retouched. They should just look like you look really good. If a shot looks retouched, that's shitty retouching. This is cool. We don't need much at all. Just going to jump in and bring out some highlights. Again, it's just a little macro, so I'm just painting in some brighter bits here. Just to give, it's going to emphasize shape. And this is stuff that if you're a photographer, like, this is a technique called dodge and burn, by the way, which most photographers will be quite familiar with. It's probably the most old-fashioned retouching technique there is. Back in the day, this used to be done in a dark room by literally holding either a darker piece of paper or creating a mask and overexposing different elements of the image. But this technique is as old as photography, so don't think of retouching as an entirely modern invention. Just when I was doing that, and this happens all the time, as you're moving in on a photograph, you're going to kind of notice different bits. So I just want to smooth this out, and again we're just jumping into low frequency layer again, just to smooth. Again, this is the total power of frequency separation retouching. Is you just like, there's nothing you can't change. You don't need to know lots of different techniques. You're just, because everything's a painting. So anything you see that displeases you, you can always just paint it out. Look at that. Back in the high frequency layer. Might even take out some of the. I worry that with the high frequency retouching, this like tiny detail stuff. Honestly, I'm right in and on this huge display, and I worry you're not going to see it, to be honest, on YouTube. It's going to look like I'm doing pointless stuff, which, to be honest, being as so much of my work, the main place it's going to be viewed is either on Spotlight or Instagram, which are like 1 megapixel. Probably some of this work will never be seen. But if a person does want to chuck it up really big as like the landing page on a website, or if they want to get it printed, it's unlikely people are going to get things printed these days. But if they want to look at it really big, it's important to me that it looks good. The whole thing of the high value thing is, so we're just going to bring a bit more saturation into the lips. We're just going to pull the hue down a little bit that way, and make them a little bit darker. Again, so that was just affecting lips, and I'm going to invert it just in case. So it was just affecting those colors, but you never know. Maybe it was like, I'm only trying to affect the lip colors, but there may have been something else in the image that shared that color palette and it would affect. So hey, just to be on the safe side, we create a mask and we just paint it in just over the lips. Cool, it's looking good. Now, I mentioned I was going to sharpen the eyes. I actually got a quick shortcut for that, just because it's the most contrived Photoshop keyboard shortcut imaginable. It's like Control-Alt-Shift-N and then E or something. It's like a right fiddle. Okay, so we're using Topaz Sharpen. So Topaz is an AI sharpener. They use it for like upscaling movies and stuff. I think they make an app called Gigapixel, which upscales stuff. Also, very cool. If you ever need an absolutely huge version of an image. Oh, this is interesting. Okay. So you see I just did a sharpening there of, let me just turn off this mask. Okay. I can't remember how to turn off. Okay, so that turns off the mask. So that was the sharpening. I'll just turn that off and then on again. You see it sharpened the whole image. I don't want to sharpen the whole image. You basically never want to be sharpening the whole image unless you're maybe like a landscape photographer and you've shot something really flat like a building. I can't imagine why you would ever want to sharpen an entire image. But what we're going to do is, so look at it. Yeah, look at it like here. You can see that, like that looks over sharpened and like that's not an area you want to be sharpening. So we've created a mask and we're just gonna, again, paint in the mask and we're just gonna sharpen the eyes. That brings that back in. And pretty cool, right? This is the good uses of AI. Just gives us an absolutely punishing sharp. You can give a tiny bit on the lips. Basically going to do the ideal thing. It's just going to look like we nailed the focus absolutely perfectly. Pretty cool. I like it. I'm just going to select just Christina. There we go. A little bit more AI. And we're just going to bring up so this is just adding a little warmth, a little red to the very darkest bits of the shadows there. Just because in my my normal import, my normal grade adds some cyan and a little bit of green into the shadows because that's what most movie grading would do. And sometimes I like to just pull it out of the subject so you get the best of both worlds. We'll just use that same mask. And we'll overlay a little bit of like a kind of gold thing. There we go. Just adds a little warmth to the skin tones. Might just do a tiny bit. Yeah, already that's really cool. One more little bit. I just want to make the highlights very slightly punchier. So we're just going to do a curves adjustment layer, and this is another thing that's going to be masked right out. So I'm just going to bring these highlights like really bright, and I'm going to chuck in a little, I think maybe green. Sometimes daylight has like a greenishness to it, certainly in comparison to people, but then we're only going to apply this to the very, 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 very highlights of the image, just about those. We're just going to split that out. There you go, so you can just see it's hitting those kind of things. This obviously would look monstrous, but that's at 100%. We're going to bring it down to like just a fraction of that, like 10, 11, 12%. Yeah. This is the kind of thing that, again, like YouTube or any kind of video compression is going to minimize that to such a degree that you're barely going to see that I'm doing anything. But it has just a little low frequency smoothing. There we go. Cool. We're done. Let me just bring this up nice and big for you, and we can see this is the before and the after. Before, after. The cool thing is, if you're just looking at the after, you see what I mean? This doesn't look like a massively retouched photograph. There's nothing unnatural about this. This looks like a human being, and it looks like a human being who's just had maybe a slightly higher level, better level of makeup. It's only when you see it next to the original, you see that there's kind of, it looks less polished, right? It's the whole point of the retouch. Cool, done, save. This one's an interesting one, because this one, of all the pics, is probably the most technically challenging photograph. Like, colors, I'm going to pull that to green. It has a little magenta to it, as is that camera, and it was quite dark as well. And she's picked, like, but here's the thing, she's picked quite a dark image, so you've got to take from that note that, like, she probably still wants it to be quite moody. So we're going to try and keep some shadows in it, keep the general vibe of the photograph as like a slightly moody photograph, but we're just gonna, we can do that by bringing up some contrast as well. Bringing up some contrast is just gonna keep the shadows kind of moody as well, but I just want, you never want to be, from a casting perspective, you never want to be like the darkest image on the page. You don't want to look like you're trying to hide in your headshots. But at the same time, I still want to kind of keep the spirit of the shot. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. The rest of the, we can be a little bolder. Yeah, one darker. The rest of the technical things, like the eyes being very slightly soft, what's probably happened is the focus is just, I think this was probably just quite a dynamic shot. She was probably throwing her hair about. And so, you know, as you move around in a shot, you're going to either get some movement blur, or like the focus point isn't going to be exactly right. But we can tweak that to an extent. Yeah, you can see it's fairly sharp there on the hands, not quite on the eyes, but I tend to shoot wide open with quite fast lenses, so your depth of field is like, it's sometimes like maybe only a millimeter or two. So you're gonna see this a little bit unless someone's very still. The rest of this we're going to do in Photoshop. Okay, cool. Let's jump in. Just going to create a new layer, and these kind of stray hairs I mostly like. This little bit here, can you get rid of? Most of the stuff I don't really. It's weird doing these videos because I kind of having to explain the thoughts I make actually sort of makes me think harder, because I kind of have to articulate what the thought process is behind this stuff. But most of the time I don't really consciously think about it, although I realize the same logic is going through, but you just don't kind of articulate it in your head what your reasoning is behind these things. It's just stuff you do because you've learned that that's how you like things to look. Yep. Get rid of these little bits. Cool. And then we jump into the frequency separation, which is that one. I recently set up some new, I used to just do this with keyboard shortcuts, and I was always stretching my fingers across the key. And the other day I thought, I never used the buttons on my Wacom, which are configurable, so I decided to configure all the keyboard shortcuts I use quite often to the Wacom, but I haven't yet locked them into like muscle memory. In fact, the muscle memory still goes to the keyboard, so you see me every time I go to do one of these things, going to the keyboard and then going, wait, let me try and use the Wacom. I'm just still trying to retrain my brain to jump over to the Wacom. These are what it's like, saves you, I don't know, saves you maybe a second and a half on each one. But if you spend your I don't know, half your time. I would say half my time is photos, half my time is retouching. So if you spend half your time basically doing this, then those little those little 1.5 seconds may add up to something. So we're just darkening the eyes a little bit. Not darkening, lightening. It's a little dark under the eyes, which again is kind of in the vibe of the shot. Like, I think her vibe is this kind of indie movie, like maybe a young Helena Bonham Carter, that kind of thing. Like, there's something slightly gothic about Christina, and we want to keep that. So there's no sense in making her look like a Disney princess. We kind of need to keep a little of this edge, because it's cool. It more fits my style. And again, it's like, that's the mood of this shot, right? The playing with the hair. It's a ballsy shot. It's like I'm not exactly playing by the rules. I'm being playful. I'm doing my own thing, which is perfect. Like, this is what you want to be picking in headshots. You want to be able to own your casting. So here's what happened though. There's a stray hair here, which is an unfortunate position. So it just looks, on like a quick glance, like it might be like a moustache or something, which is not accurate. So we're just gonna, sometimes that's what happens in retouching. It doesn't matter what necessarily something is. It's just about what it looks like, you know. We're talking about photos here. There is no 100% accurate way to turn a 3D object into a 2D representation of that object. Like, it's never going to be, there is no exact transformation. There is no real life when you're talking about moving something from 3D to 2D. Everything is an interpolation. There is no such thing as a real photograph of someone. It's not real. It's an artistic interpretation of a person. So if it looks weird, it wasn't weird. Even if it is something that basically, by the laws of nature, should be there, you're within your rights to tweak it. You don't want stuff. Any headshot where you have to look at twice for like a negative reason, like, oh, what's that? Oh, what's that? Well, this goes for clothing choices as well. If you're wearing something where someone looks at the photograph and their first thing is like, oh, that's an interesting top, you should not be wearing that top. Like, that's gonna, like, you don't want the double take for that reason on a headshot. It should all be about mood, vibe, expression. Like, it needs to be, that's a cool person. And even this goes to like my perspective. I've failed if someone looks at a headshot and their response is, that's a cool headshot, as in thinking I did some cool work. Like, that's not ideal. I mean, I like it obviously, but that's not ideal for me. I need the result for me to have done my job absolutely right. The correct result for a headshot is that actor looks badass. That actor looks cool. I want to bring in that actor. I need to be kind of invisible in this process. It's like if you're watching a movie and you go, oh, those were incredible special effects. That kind of means they weren't, man. That means they failed. That means they were drawing attention to the special effects. Good special effects, you shouldn't notice. You shouldn't know. You'd just be like, how did they do that? Or even just, so in the moment, you don't really think about how things were achieved. You just embrace the story. That's where we want to be. So we're on the high frequency layer, just cleaning up the skin here. You can see what I mean with the shallow depth of field, because the skin detail is sharp, and like, how close is your skin here to the focal plane of your eye? It's like millimeters, right? And the eye is a little bit soft, so yeah, the focus is off by millimeters, if that. Just
cleaning up that. Cool. It's too far, right? I want to keep some of that texture. And the shot has like a gritty look to it, and we're trying to maintain that. That was just some of that hair we removed earlier was also on the high frequency layer. We're just pulling that out as well. This is a good man. Look at this framing here. This is great. Look like how like obviously we just didn't no one would ever use this framing, but like how much energy does this have? That's just really cool. Yeah, man. I like it. Cool. Am I going to brighten it first or sharpen it first? I'm going to sharpen it first. So it just changes the whole image. And we're just going to sharpen again. So just AI sharpening again. That looks right. Done a good job again. But you see how we're going to mask this off. Because if you just done a sharpen, which is what, like, if you're just using the AI as you would, like, that's what it would do. Like, it would just sharpen the whole thing. You very rarely on those apps have any control over like where it does those things, and it would have done exactly this. So while it's come in really nicely and it's really helped us cleaning up this eye, like this skin looks horrible now, right? Like it's really over sharpened it. So like there's no way you would want to apply that to the whole image. So we're just going to mask it off, and we're just going to paint in the sharpening where we want it, just on the eye. Might brighten these eyes a little bit as well, because they're like behind Just going to bring in a new layer. Just wanted to remove some little bits here. I've just done the sharpen on it. I can't actually use my frequency separation layers, so I'm just using a little clone stamp tool or healing brush tool. Trying to do this manually. Nice. Cool. Now we're going to brighten this a little bit using a curves adjustment layer. Cool. Again, I want to paint this in very selectively. And this is the area of retouching where you can go way overboard. You see this in a lot of pretty bad retouching where people look like they've, because this would have been, I think this was shot in the winter. This is a dark day. She's just being lit by natural light, but you can see how dilated her pupils are, which is because it was dark. Or she was high on something. I think it was because it was dark. Even that's a little bit far, isn't it? You pull it back a little bit. Yeah. It needs to look plausible. You can go a little, there's sometimes with a lot of light in their eyes, you can go a little bit, maybe almost like kind of hyper real. But not usually a good idea. It depends on the vibe of the shot. If the shot is really has a really commercial look to it, you can get away with a lot more of this more extreme stuff, because that's what that kind of look is. But this has a naturalness to the shot, so we want to match that with being fairly restrained on the retouch. So just a little bit more on the highlights. Yep. Looks cool, man. Almost nothing to do to this apart from just going to select Christina, and something you see me do a lot. Just bring a little red back into the shadows of the hair. Tiny bit of warmth there. Maybe just in the highlights. I kind of with this want to just going to add some cyan by pulling out red. If you want to add cyan, you just take away red, because it's the opposite. Cyan's one of those colors that you never hear about in life. It might be my favorite color, cyan. I think it's only because it's the opposite of red that it's known. Otherwise I wouldn't know what it was. But you use it a lot in digital work. Whenever you hear the phrase CMYK, which is used in printing, whereas RGB is used in screens, C stands for cyan. Okay. Ooh, I like this one. Alright, this is a cool selection of shots. You know, this is my favorite, but it's definitely, maybe it is my favorite. I don't know. It's very cool. It's like a really nice middle ground, right? Like it's quite classic headshot, but at the same time, it's got quite a lot of vibe to it. Like, we're breaking some rules here. Like, she's covering an eye with her hair, which in traditional headshot advice, people are just going to tell you it's a terrible idea. But it's a great idea, I think. Like, it just shows, like, we're not really missing any key information. Like, there are other photographs that show that side of her face, right? That's slightly more glamorous. So this fits in so nicely. It just kind of, it's all just about her attitude and her mood and this kind of, you know, indie movie vibe that she has going on, you know? It worked nice. And she's got, like, the jacket there, which, yeah. This is cool. It's going to round out the set nicely. But bear in mind, you've got this in the set as well, which is, like, so different. I just want to make this shot a little greener. This happens a lot. You jump back between things and you kind of want to change stuff all the time. Yeah, so it's not like she's not going to have clear images of herself in her headshots. And this one just has a little bit of everything and a very cool attitude to it. I'm just going to bring up the black levels, which is just going to give us a bit more detail in the hair. But again, just being black levels on anything with video compression, like you're not going to see stuff in there. All video compression will just go, we are not interested in shadows. It just crushes them all to basically a black. So yeah, you're not going to see that. One thing I've noticed stuff like this hair, I do want to get rid of, and I can see already that like it's going to be a slight challenge. I think, like, ideally I'd be able to get rid of it in this first layer. Let me see what happens if I try and do that. I think it's not going to work. There's too much grain. There's too much other stuff surrounding this. If you just got rid of this in the way that you would normally just get rid of a quick stray hair, oh, what do you know? Actually, yeah, it worked fine. Okay, not the example I wanted for that,
That worked great. We'll clean that up a tiny bit, just that texture in the high frequency layer. But actually, sometimes you get lucky. Things that seem like they might be troublesome are actually fine. Yeah, we're not going to get rid of all these stray hairs. This is a shot that is about stray hair, right? Like that's one of the key elements of the shot. Imagine I give this back to her and just like pulled away all this hair. Like there's no, that's the whole point of the image. So, but I may get rid of like this one just because it's catching the light a little bit. We may get rid of. And the thing about that is you need to, generally you can't just get rid of the whole, rid of just the bit that distracts you. You have to get rid of the whole hair. Otherwise you're going to have a little bit of hair that just starts out of nowhere, which will look like an obvious retouching artifact. Things that start from nowhere. They either look like really bad retouching or AI, obviously. AI has stuff that starts from nowhere all the time. It's one of the big shibboleths of AI. AI doesn't seem to care about physics. It just kind of goes, oh, there would probably be something like this here. And that, like, especially when you've seen those things with like, where they AIs kind of turn memes into videos and people just kind of, I don't know, appear from nowhere and turn around so their like head faces the wrong way and stuff. Like AI doesn't care about physics. It just cares about images it's seen before. Whereas we have to care about physics and whether stuff is actually possible to have happened. Because otherwise, it's one of those things that like people won't necessarily notice it, but if they do notice it, it'll look rubbish. So there we go. This one's troublesome, just because it's right on the edge of the lip there. So we're just going to go to like a really small brush. Just pull that out. Cool. I'll speed through this. You've seen me do this already. Nothing to see. Cool. You know what we do by now. We are gonna separate the frequencies. About 6, that looks like. Just enough to keep the skin texture. This one should be relatively simple. No big hotspots or anything. This is again shot with just natural light, so natural light's very, very kind, especially this thing in the other one, you can tell from the pupils, I think was quite a wintry shoot. So odds are, being as I shoot in London, with natural light, it was going to have been a cloudy day. Cloudy day in London, it's not going to give you any harsh hotspots or anything on the image to trouble you. Kind of a shame for the purpose of this, because one of the things that frequency separation is absolutely awesome at is
getting rid of like uneven skin tones that you would get from hard light. You can really smooth out lighting artifacts in frequency separation. Maybe a little hot spot on the chin. Cool. See, we're going to keep it still kind of edgy looking. Maybe. Do we get rid of that? That hair? Yeah, maybe we do. Okay. So this one, I don't want to do with frequencies like this. Ideally, I would have done before I separated the frequencies, but we're just going to add a new layer above it and just pull out that hair there. And you know what? I was just saying how you don't want to have a hair starting from nowhere, because this comes out of this bit here. This is totally fine. Like, that's plausible, right? I mean, we know different, but hey. I won't tell if you won't. It's very nice of Christina and these. There's some more. It's going to be a more concise video on retouching photos that I'm working on with this. This is why I'm doing these screen records of these retouches. Just to say thank you to Christina, who very kindly gave me permission to show all of these photos being retouched, which takes quite a lot of confidence, right? And just a very nice attitude, because these are like punishingly sharp lenses, you know. No, and like, we're looking at this so close on such a big screen. Like, this is good skin. Like, she has good skin, but you look at anyone's skin really close up, it's like, oh my god, like, you know. It's so, it takes someone who's very comfortable in themselves to let us learn from this process here. So thank you. Yeah, let's pull out that hair. That hair was thin enough that it's going to be just in the high frequency layer, so we can just pull it out that way. So again, I want to get rid of all of this lip texture. Lip texture is cool. One of my favorite portraits. I'll show my ignorance here. I don't really follow a lot of photographers. I tend to follow cinematographers more when I'm looking for inspiration.
There's a really cool photo of Brad Pitt from the 90s. I think it's quite an iconic portrait. And he has these just like super dry lips. They look really just like he's been climbing Everest or something, and they're just the most chapped lips. But it's so cool. It's just such a bold image. And again, it just kind of flies in the face of what people normally think of as a flattering portrait, but it absolutely is. I mean, in his case, it's like this pure masculinity and comfort in himself that he has that shot there, but it just makes it a really interesting portrait. So there's no hard and fast rule on what you want to do with any kind of texture. There's nothing in a photo is necessarily bad. It's just about making the shot the most impactful shot it can be. And to do that, you need to know what statement you're making with the shot so that you can emphasize that statement, that intent. Cool. It's actually a really simple one. I'm just gonna make the lips pop a little bit. Just push the hue. There we go. It's like a richer color, maybe darker as well. Cool. And we're just going to paint that in so it's just on the lips. Nice. Then some things you've seen before. Brighten the eyes like crazy, but I'm going to paint it in. You know what, we could get away without sharpening these eyes. Like, this is pretty sharp. We're in so close now, and maybe it's a little OCD on my part, but maybe because I've got you watching. Going to sharpen it a little bit. Mask it out. Yeah. Yep. Cool. No way you'd see that. Cool. Let me go a little dodge and burn. So this, if you remember from before, we're just emphasizing shadows where we want to emphasize shadows. On the side of the nose. There. Gives a bit more shape, a bit more drama. And highlights where we want to emphasize highlights. This is just using like these layers that I'm painting on. I have like a highlights layer and a shadows layer that I bring in with a shortcut. On my highlights layer, the layer with some settings that make it apply much more heavily to brighter areas. And the shadows layer is the opposite of that. So it just means that you can do this a bit quicker without having to be quite so precise. Just a little bit more low frequency work around the neck. Nice. Nice. And some things we've done before. We're going to select Christina.
I will say this is that like quick AI selection is probably the main reason I've stuck with Adobe. Adobe, I don't know if you follow the nerdy news, but they've been doing some pretty reprehensible things recently regarding people's ownership of their work. And they're the kind of company I would rather not use their software, but it's better than everyone else's, just is. So it's expensive and they're annoying. Sometimes you just got to prioritize the quality of the thing. There we go. I think we're good. One more time. Zoom it right in really big for you. So that's before and after. Before, after. You know what? One more little there. Let's just clean up a jacket a tiny bit. These little things were distracting me. Yeah. Nice. So, before, after, before, after, done. So just gonna talk a little bit about, let's show this in collection with a full selection of shots. So this was the choices she had made before. So now we can see all of her picks together collectively. I'm just going to show you just the PSDs. So yeah, this is all of Christina's headshots from me. Yeah, she made some choices from her original shoot, and then she came back, this was maybe 6 months later, and picked up some extra ones. This is a cool thing to do. You kind of just want to, like, you can try some photos, and I shoot a lot in a session. So, like, you can try some photos, see how things are going. You have a new idea. You shouldn't really need to have a new shoot. We should, like, I try and, certainly in everything but my shortest shoot, will have, like, pretty much laid out all of the available options of directions we can go in. So you can certainly come back, and if you've been cast in a thing or you just want to try something different, like, you can go in a different direction just by coming back and picking up extra shots. But we can see now kind of how collectively these work as a thing. But I also wanted to talk about, so these are in, as they come out of the camera, like, what would it be, 3x2? It's not your classic 8x10. I used to crop shots to 8x10 because it's the kind of industry standard on headshots. And sometimes I will, if I think it suits it better. That's an 8x10 crop. I just think it's unnecessary. Like, there's no reason anymore. The reason that they were 8x10s is that people would have them printed, and so that they all sort of stacked together neatly. But now they're all up on Spotlight on a website. It makes you're making very little difference in terms of screen real estate that you're taking up with a shot like that's cropped to that or cropped to that. Like, it makes no difference. There's a lot of stuff in headshots that kind of is what everyone does because it's what everyone does, while the reasoning behind it has expired many, many years ago. Same for headshots used to be black and white, and that was for printing also, and now they aren't very often, which also, and now they're almost always in color, which means black and white is so much fun. Like, look how cool this shot, like, this pops in black and white. In fact, this was shot on, what was it shot on? Q2 monochrome, so this was shot on a camera that only shoots black and white, so it's got, like, the detail on these things is absolutely insane. It's like they've got this fidelity to them. Again, YouTube's going to be ruining this, but the sharpness and the detail on these photos is absolutely incredible. They're so striking. Yeah, that's how her shots works the set. I'm going to send them over now.
Well, thanks for watching to the end. I'm sure it's not all of you, but yeah, it's quite a long process, retouching, but quite a therapeutic one. I rather enjoy it. Note for those people who keep emailing me asking if I want to outsource my retouching to India or whatever. No, I quite like it. It's okay, isn't it? It's an alright way to spend the day. So yeah, thanks for staying with me. Hope you enjoyed it. Some more content coming up, including a much more concise video about retouching in the industry as a whole and the different directions that people go in, the pros and cons of those. But you've seen now how I do things.